I am an old woman now. My hands tremble when I hold a teacup, and my knees ache when rain is coming. The children who live in my house today call me Grandmother Rosa, though I am no one's grandmother by blood. I have lived long enough to see many seasons pass, many children grow, and many memories fade. But there is one memory that has never faded. Not in 50 years. Not even for a single day. It is about a boy. A boy no one chose. And I am the one who failed him. Back then I was not old. I was in my early 30s, strong and proud, running a small orphanage on the edge of town. It was not a beautiful place, but it was warm, and the walls were painted in soft colors to make the children feel safe. We had 12 beds, 12 wooden dressers, and one big dining table where laughter sometimes filled the room. Most days children came and went. Families would visit, smiling nervously, looking around with hopeful eyes. The younger children always stood straight when visitors came. They tried to look sweet, polite, lovable, like little birds hoping to be chosen. And most of them were. One by one. Except him. His name was Malik. Malik arrived on a cold morning in November. I still remember the day clearly. The fog hanging low in the air, the way frost clung to the edges of the windows. A social worker brought him in, holding his small hand. He looked about 7 years old. Thin. Quiet. Watching everything. His skin was deep brown, like polished walnut wood. And his eyes were wide and careful, as if he had already learned not to trust the world too quickly. He carried a tiny bag, barely full, and wore a sweater that was too large for him. This is Malik, the social worker told me. He doesn't have any family willing to take him. I nodded, kneeling down so I could meet his eyes. Hello, Malik, I said gently. You're safe here. He didn't smile. He only nodded once. At first, the other children were curious. They gathered around him like sparrows, asking questions all at once. What's your favorite color? Do you like cartoons? Can you run fast? Malik answered quietly, his voice barely louder than the wind. But over time, something changed. You see, children notice differences quickly, sometimes faster than adults. And sometimes, they can be cruel without fully understanding why. The first time I noticed trouble was during lunch. Malik sat alone at the far end of the table, his shoulders curled inward. The other children laughed and talked, but his plate remained untouched. I walked over. Why aren't you eating? I asked. He hesitated, then whispered, They said I should sit here. I looked around. Sure enough, the other children had left a space between themselves and him, as if he carried something contagious. Who said that? I asked. No one answered. Not a single child looked at me. That silence, it still echoes in my mind. Adoption days came often. Families arrived with warm smiles and hopeful hearts. They walked through the halls, sometimes bringing small gifts, dolls, toy cars, stuffed animals. The younger children tried their best to impress them. And one by one, they were chosen. I remember a girl named Lucy. Curly hair, bright laughter. Adopted by a kind couple who cried tears of joy when they signed the papers. Then came Marcus, loud and playful, taken home by a tall man who promised to teach him baseball. Each goodbye was filled with hugs. And each goodbye left Malik standing farther in the background. Watching. Always watching. At first, I told myself it was coincidence. That his turn would come. That some family somewhere would see what I saw. The quiet kindness in his eyes. The way he helped younger children tie their shoes. The way he folded blankets without being asked. But weeks became months. Months became years. And still, no one chose him. The bullying started slowly. A shove in the hallway. A whispered insult. A laugh when he dropped his books. One evening, I overheard voices coming from the yard behind the orphanage. You're never getting adopted, one boy sneered. Yeah, another added, laughing. No family wants you. I stepped outside just in time to see Malik standing alone, his fists clenched, his head lowered. The other boys scattered when they saw me. I walked over. Are you hurt? I asked softly. He shook his head. But his eyes were wet. I'm okay, he whispered. He always said that. I'm okay. Even when he wasn't. The truth is, I should have done more. I should have stopped it earlier. I should have protected him better. But I believed, foolishly, that children would grow kinder with time. Sometimes they don't. Year after year, children came. Year after year, children left. New arrivals were adopted quickly, even those who arrived after Malik. I saw it happen again and again. Families would walk past him. They would smile politely, then choose someone else. Every time it happened, his shoulders sank a little lower. His voice grew quieter. His laughter, which once existed, soft and rare, disappeared completely. Until one day, he stopped smiling at all. And then came the day when everything changed. The day I left the orphanage for just one night. One single night. I thought it was harmless. I thought the children would be fine. I thought nothing terrible could happen in such a short time. But that night would become the night I regret more than any other in my life. Even now, as an old woman sitting in silence, I still replay that moment again and again. If I had stayed, if I had listened, if I had understood sooner, maybe Malik's story would have ended differently. There are nights that pass like any other. And then there are nights that stay with you forever. Nights that refuse to fade. Even when your hair turns gray and your hands grow weak. The night I left the orphanage was one of those nights. I did not know it at the time, of course. If I had known, I would have stayed. I would have locked the doors, sat beside Malik's bed, and watched over him until morning came. But life rarely warns us before tragedy. It simply happens. It was late afternoon when the letter arrived. I remember the envelope, thin, pale, and slightly bent at the corners. A messenger handed it to me at the front gate. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened it slowly, not expecting anything important. But as my eyes moved across the page, my heart sank. My sister had fallen ill. Very ill. She lived in the next town, nearly 2 hours away, and there was no one else to care for her. The doctor had written the letter himself, urging me to come as soon as possible. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the paper. The children's laughter echoed from inside the building, floating through the hallways like wind chimes. I could hear footsteps running, someone shouting playfully, chairs scraping against the floor. Everything sounded normal. Too normal. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my pocket. I had to go. But leaving the orphanage overnight was never something I liked to do. I trusted the older children to behave, and there was a caretaker who stayed nearby, but still, I always felt uneasy when I was not there. That day the uneasiness felt heavier, like a storm cloud pressing down on my chest. I gathered the children in the dining room before sunset. They sat around the table, whispering to one another, curious about why I had called them together. Some leaned forward eagerly. Others fidgeted with their sleeves. Malik sat at the far end, as usual. Quiet. Still. Watching. I need to leave tonight, I told them gently. My sister is sick, and I must go take care of her. A few children gasped. Will you be gone long? Lucy asked. Just one night, I replied. I will return tomorrow. I looked around the room, making sure every child met my eyes. You must behave, I added firmly. No fighting. No teasing. Everyone looks after one another. Do you understand? A chorus of small voices answered. Yes, Miss Rosa. All except Malik. He did not speak. He simply nodded once. That quiet nod. I see it every time I close my eyes. After dinner, I walked through the halls one last time. I checked the windows. I locked the storage room. I made sure the younger children brushed their teeth and climbed into bed. When I reached Malik's room, I paused at the doorway. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor, his hands resting on his knees. Malik, I said softly. He looked up. Yes, Miss Rosa? I will be back tomorrow, I told him. Everything will be fine. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then he asked something that I did not fully understand at the time. Will someone come tomorrow? His voice was careful, almost fragile. Someone? I asked. A family, he whispered. I felt a small ache in my chest. Maybe, I said gently. You never know. He lowered his gaze again. Okay, he murmured. I should have said more. I should have told him he mattered. That he was not forgotten. That he was worthy of love. But I only gave him a small smile and left the room. That moment, It returns to me again and again, like a broken record that never stops playing. The journey to my sister's house felt longer than usual. The sky darkened quickly, clouds swallowing the last pieces of sunlight. The road stretched ahead of me, empty and silent. I kept thinking about the children, about whether they were asleep, about whether they remembered my instructions, and about Malik. Especially Malik. I could not explain why he stayed in my thoughts more than the others that night. Perhaps it was instinct. Or perhaps guilt had already begun to form inside me, even before anything had happened. My sister's condition was worse than I expected. She lay in bed, pale and trembling, her breathing shallow and uneven. I spent the night beside her, wiping her forehead with cool cloths and whispering gentle reassurances. But even while sitting there, even while holding her hand, my mind kept drifting back to the orphanage, to the long hallway, to the quiet bedrooms, to the boy who always sat alone. Morning came slowly, too slowly. The sun rose behind thin curtains, casting pale light across the room. My sister slept at last, her breathing calmer than before. The doctor assured me she would recover. "You may return home," he said. Home. That word felt heavy. I thanked him quickly and gathered my things. My hands moved faster than usual, my heart beating with strange urgency. I wanted to get back. Something inside me whispered that I needed to hurry, that something was wrong. The road back to the orphanage felt endless. Every minute stretched into 10. Every turn felt too slow. When the building finally appeared in the distance, I felt both relief and dread at the same time. The windows were quiet. Too quiet. No laughter. No movement. Just silence. I parked outside and stepped out of the car. The morning air felt cold against my skin, even though the sun was shining. I walked toward the front door, my footsteps echoing against the stone path. Before I even reached the handle, I noticed something strange. The door was slightly open. Just a little. A thin crack. My heart skipped. I never left doors unlocked. Never. "Hello." I called out. No answer. Only silence. I pushed the door open slowly. The hallway stretched before me, long and still. The smell of breakfast was missing. No voices. No footsteps. Nothing. "Children." I called again. Still no answer. A chill ran through my body. I moved quickly down the hallway, checking each room. One by one. Beds were empty. Blankets tossed aside. Shoes missing from the floor. Panic rose in my chest. Where were they? Where had they gone? Then I heard voices outside. Loud. Excited. I rushed toward the back door and threw it open. There they were. Most of the children gathered in the yard, laughing and shouting, chasing one another as if nothing was wrong. Relief flooded through me. "Why are you outside?" I demanded, trying to steady my voice. "The caretaker let us play," one boy answered casually. I exhaled slowly. Everything seemed normal again. Almost. But then I counted them. One by one. Lucy. Marcus. Anna. Jonah. Thomas. I counted again. And again. My hands began to shake. One was missing. Just one. But it was the one I feared most. "Where is Malik?" I asked. The laughter faded. The children glanced at one another, uneasy. No one answered immediately. Finally, a small voice spoke. "He didn't come outside." My heart pounded harder. "Why not?" Another child shrugged. "He stayed inside in his room." Inside. Alone. A heavy silence fell over the yard. And in that moment, I felt something inside me break. Because deep down, before I even stepped back into that building, before I even reached his door, I already knew something terrible had happened. And the worst part was that I had not been there. My legs felt heavy as I walked back into the building. Each step echoed louder than the last, as if the walls themselves were warning me not to continue. The hallway seemed longer than I remembered, stretching ahead like a tunnel with no end. Behind me, the children stood in the yard, whispering nervously among themselves. None of them followed. They knew. Children always know when something is wrong, but they were too afraid to say it. And perhaps so was I. I walked toward Malik's room. Slowly. Too slowly. My heart pounded against my ribs, loud and wild, like it was trying to escape my chest. My hands trembled so badly that I had to steady myself against the wall. "Malik!" I called softly. No answer. The silence that followed felt heavier than stone. I reached his door. It was closed. That alone was unusual. Malik usually kept it slightly open, as if he never wanted to feel completely alone. I placed my hand on the doorknob. Cold. Very cold. For a brief moment, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to turn around, to pretend everything was fine, to delay the truth just a few seconds longer. But the truth does not disappear simply because we fear it. So I opened the door. The room was quiet. Too quiet. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting in thin lines of pale morning light. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars, moving slowly through the beams of sunlight. Malik was there. Still. Silent. And in that instant, my world shattered. I will not describe everything I saw. Some memories are too painful to speak aloud, even after all these years. But I knew, the moment my eyes found him, that he was gone. Gone in a way that no apology, no regret, and no prayer could ever undo. "Malik," I whispered. My voice cracked. I stepped forward, my knees shaking so badly I could barely stand. My hands reached out instinctively, as if I could somehow pull him back, as if I could undo what had already been done. But time, once broken, cannot be repaired. I fell to the floor. And I cried. Not the quiet tears of sadness. Not the soft weeping of grief. No. I cried like a person who had lost something irreplaceable. Something that should have been protected. Something that trusted me. Later, I found the note. It was small, folded carefully and placed on his bed. His handwriting was uneven but clear. The letters pressed hard into the paper, as if he had been holding back too many feelings for too long. I remember every word. Even now. Even after half a century. It said, "Dear Miss Rosa, I tried to be good. I tried to wait. But nobody wanted me. The other kids said no family would ever choose me. I think they were right. I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me stay here. Malik." That was all. No anger. No blame. Just sadness. Just a child believing he was unwanted. And that belief broke my heart more than anything else. Not long after, something happened that still feels like fate playing a cruel joke. A car arrived at the orphanage gate. A family stepped out. A mother. A father. And a little girl holding her mother's hand. They smiled politely as they walked toward the front door, unaware of the silence hanging in the air. "Good morning," the woman said warmly. "We're here about the boy named Malik." My breath caught in my throat. For a moment, I could not speak. You came for Malik?" I asked weakly. "Yes," the father replied. "We heard about him from a neighbor. We were told he's kind, quiet, and very helpful." The little girl stepped forward. "I want a big brother," she said shyly. Her words felt like knives twisting into my chest. A big brother. That was what he could have been. That was what he deserved to be. But I was too late. Too late to save him. Too late to give him the life he had waited for. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at them. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. The mother's smile slowly faded as she saw my expression. "What happened?" she asked. And in that moment, I had to tell them. The silence that followed my explanation was unbearable. The little girl began to cry softly, clinging to her mother's arm. The father lowered his head, his jaw tightening as he fought back tears. The mother covered her mouth, her eyes filling with sorrow. "Oh, that poor child," she whispered. "Poor child." Yes, he was. But he was also strong, and patient, and kind, and deserving of love. All the things the world failed to give him in time. The days that followed were filled with grief. Not only mine, but the children's as well. For the first time, they understood the weight of their words. The teasing stopped. The cruel jokes disappeared. Silence replaced laughter for many days. One evening, Lucy came to me, her face pale and her eyes red from crying. "Miss Rosa," she whispered. "Yes, Lucy. I didn't mean what I said to him before," she murmured. I thought it was just teasing." Her voice broke. I didn't know it could hurt that much. I knelt down and hugged her tightly. Words are powerful. I told her gently. Sometimes more powerful than we realize. That lesson stayed with all of us. Forever. Years passed. The orphanage changed. Children came and went, just as before. But I changed the rules. No child would ever sit alone again. No child would ever be ignored or pushed aside without consequences. We spoke about kindness every single day. We reminded each other that every person matters. That every child deserves to feel wanted. And above all, that silence can be just as harmful as cruelty, because silence allows pain to grow unnoticed. Now I am old. Older than I ever imagined I would be. The orphanage still stands, though it looks different now. The walls have been repainted many times, and the beds have been replaced with newer ones. But one room has never truly changed in my heart. Malik's room. Sometimes late at night, when the halls are quiet and the moonlight slips through the windows, I sit alone and remember him. I remember his quiet voice, his careful smile, the way he folded blankets so neatly, the way he waited patiently, hoping someone would choose him. And I whisper into the silence, I am sorry, Malik. Not once, not twice, but every day. Because some regrets do not fade. Some memories do not soften with time. They remain sharp and clear, like broken glass you carry in your pocket. If there is one thing I have learned in all my years, it is this. No child should ever feel invisible. No child should ever believe they are unwanted. And no cruel word should ever be spoken without thinking of the harm it might cause. Because sometimes, a single word, a single moment, a single absence, can change a life forever. And sometimes, it can end one.